Hey everyone, awesome, come follow me this week. We cover more of King David's story and learn about some other aspects of his life, and then go into, we go from 2 Samuel into the actual Kings, 1 Kings. So this week in Come Follow Me is 2 Samuel 5-7, 11-12, and then 1 Kings 3, 8, 11. Again, they're not asking you to read all of it, like the whole, all those verses, but they want to focus on those chapters. So it's up to you where you read. But I'm going to cover 5 points this week that, because we're in the middle of moving, so I haven't got great time to do great lesson, but I'll just do some 5 little things that I thought really stood out and that we could really learn from. So the first one's in 2 Samuel 4:4, and then if you go over to chapter 9, verses 5-13, you see the rest of it. So in chapter 4, Saul's captains, because this is when David is like been anointed king but not yet king. So Saul's still trying to chase him down. And in that skirmish and in that fight, Jonathan's son escapes. His nurse grabs him, his nanny, his caretaker grabs him and makes a run for it, and in that he falls over. Now, because it says in verse 4 that he was lame of his feet, because of that, we don't know how he was born. Maybe he was, but he was always lame. Like, he could never walk properly. But they make a run for it and they actually get away. And that's the only one left of Saul's family. So if you read that one, his name is Mephibosheth. Mephibosheth. Okay, got that? Really cool name, actually, I think. You look at that, you're like, what? But his nurse saves him. So, much those kind of fairy tale stories where someone gets saved. And then go over to chapter 9, and verses 5-13 tells that when this conflict's over and David's king, he goes to the house of Saul, he finds Mephibosheth, and goes looking for anyone that's left. And Mephibosheth is Jonathan's son. You remember David and Jonathan had this tight as bond, this covenant friendship. So he goes to find him and say, look, so he asks who he is, and he's like, oh no, he's come to kill me. But no, actually he falls on his face and says to Mephibosheth, behold thy servant. And, this is Mephibosheth coming and going, don't kill me, I'm your servant. And David says unto him, don't worry about it. You're Jonathan's son. I'm going to restore to you all the lands of Saul. So everything that belonged to Saul in the first place, before he became king, I'm going to give back to you. And I'm going to make sure that you're taken care of. And you shall eat at my table continually. Now, this is a big deal because it's like, if you've watched The Love Boat, it's like getting a seat at the captain's table. This is getting a seat at the king's table. That's reserved for, dignitaries, visiting people, lords, ladies, whatever. Even today, getting a seat at the queen's table would be a big deal. So he's saying, look, you always have a seat at my table. It's a offer of generosity, trust, and that extended, could you say, just let's have that same, because I loved your dad so much, and I know that you are not your grandfather, who's Saul, who was trying to kill him. So, I owe you a debt. You are always taken care of. I will make sure you are okay. And he tells his servants that, and so let's just read verse 13, I think. Could you just have a read of it? Verse 5-13, it's really good. Verse 13 said, and Mephibosheth dwelt in Jerusalem, for he did eat continually at the king's table, and was lame on both his feet. He already had a son too, so he had a wife and he had a son, but they all gathered in Jerusalem, and always were provided for under King David's rule. And I think that's a really nice way and a really example of Christ-like behavior from David to Jonathan's son. And it shows us that no matter what happens in our lives and what divisions can be caused between people or families even, you don't have to be that. You can go in there and say, I will take care of you. It's okay. So that really stuck out to me that he would do that, because he didn't need to do that. But this shows his good intentions. This shows the character that David is and was and still is. And yes, we'll talk about the bad thing he did, but we'll also talk about the other stuff as well, because there's some really good things in there. So that's a good starting point to just sort of see some of this, because we already talked last week about David and Goliath and the way that, that all happened, and David's just integrity and the other Christ-like characteristics he has, and we all fail, so we're going to talk about that next. All right, so I'll see you there for insight number 2, but just something to think about, Christ-like attitudes and how you can show those, like that generosity of spirit and that kindness. Maybe there's someone you could make room for at your table. All right, I'll see you soon.